Something surprising just entered the conversation around the case of Nnamdi Kanu. And it did not come from Nigeria. It came from East Africa. The President of Kenya, William Ruto, has spoken publicly about the case. And his words are now spreading across political circles. According to him, he is ready to fight for the freedom of Nnamdi Kanu. Yes. A sitting African president saying he is willing to push for justice in a case that has divided opinions inside Nigeria. Ruto said he is ready to take the necessary steps to make sure the right thing is done. He said the rights of Nnamdi Kanu must not be violated. And he also mentioned that the African Union could become involved when the time is right. This statement has immediately triggered conversations across different political spaces. It has also raised questions among observers who follow African politics closely. When a foreign leader comments on a sensitive legal matter in another country, people naturally begin to wonder what the bigger picture might be. Why is a foreign president speaking about this case now? What role can the African Union even play? And what could this mean for Nigeria? To understand why this moment is getting attention, it is important to remember what recently happened in the legal battle involving Nnamdi Kanu. On November 20th, the court delivered one of the most serious judgments in the long-running case. Nnamdi Kanu was sentenced to life imprisonment after years of legal disputes and intense political debate. For supporters of the Nigerian government, the ruling represented a strong message about national security and the protection of the country's unity. For supporters of Kanu, the sentence was seen very differently. Many of them believe the case is deeply political and that the legal system has been used to silence a movement they see as a struggle for self-determination. This divide in opinion has existed for many years. Nnamdi Kanu is the leader of the Indigenous People of Biafra, widely known as IPOB. The group has been at the center of debates about the future of Nigeria, especially in the southeastern region of the country. IPOB has long called for the creation of an independent Biafra state. The Nigerian government, however, has repeatedly rejected this demand and has labeled the group a serious security concern. Over time, the conflict between the government and the movement has created tension, political arguments, and legal battles. This is the environment in which the court eventually reached its decision. After the sentencing on November 20th, Nnamdi Kanu was transferred to a correctional facility in Sokoto. For many observers, that moment looked like the final stage of the case. A life sentence is one of the strongest penalties any court can deliver, and it usually signals the end of a long legal fight. However, the legal process did not stop there. Kanu's legal team quickly made it clear that the battle would continue. They filed an appeal against the conviction at the Court of Appeal in Nigeria. An appeal means that a higher court will now review the earlier judgment. The judges at the appeal court will examine whether the original trial followed the law properly and whether the evidence and legal arguments were handled correctly. If the appeal court finds serious legal errors, the decision could be changed or even overturned. If the judges agree with the earlier ruling, the life sentence will remain in place. This is why the case is still very active despite the heavy judgment that has already been delivered. Now the unexpected statement from William Ruto has added a new layer to the conversation. Ruto made it clear that he believes the case should be handled in a way that protects Kanu's rights. He said he would do his best to ensure that the right process is followed and that fairness is respected. He also suggested that the African Union could play a role when the moment becomes appropriate. These remarks have quickly spread across social media, political discussions, and news platforms. Some people believe the comments could increase international attention on the case. Others believe they are simply a statement of personal concern from a fellow African leader. But regardless of the interpretation, the impact of the statement is already clear. The case of Nnamdi Kanu is once again at the center of regional discussion, not only within Nigeria but also beyond its borders. For now, the legal process inside Nigeria continues, and the appeal remains one of the most important developments to watch. At the same time, The political reaction to Ruto's statement shows that the conversation around this case is far from over. The statement from William Ruto did not come lightly. Presidents rarely involve themselves in another country's legal battle, especially a case as sensitive as the one involving Nnamdi Kanu. Nigeria is one of Africa's most powerful nations. It is the continent's largest economy and one of its strongest political voices. So when another African leader talks about a Nigerian court decision, it naturally raises eyebrows across diplomatic and political circles. But Ruto made it clear that his focus is on rights and justice. He said he wants to make sure the right thing is done. And he said Kanu's rights must not be violated. Those words may sound simple, but in politics they carry serious meaning. When leaders begin to talk about rights in a legal case that has already produced a major court judgment, it usually signals that the issue is moving beyond local debate and into a wider continental conversation. Ruto also made a careful reference to the role that the African Union could eventually play. The African Union is the main political body that connects African nations. It handles diplomatic cooperation, regional conflicts, governance concerns, and discussions about human rights across the continent. Although the organization does not normally interfere directly with the internal legal systems of member states, it has mechanisms that allow it to raise concerns or encourage dialogue when political tensions become serious. This is why Ruto's mention of the African Union immediately attracted attention. It suggested that the case might not remain a purely Nigerian matter in terms of discussion and diplomacy. However, many analysts are quick to point out an important fact. Nigeria's legal system operates independently from outside political influence. Once a court has delivered a judgment, the next step must follow the established legal process. And that process is already underway. Because Nnamdi Kanu has officially appealed his life sentence. An appeal means the case will now be reviewed by the Court of Appeal. The judges there will examine the original trial, the legal arguments presented by both sides, and whether the lower court applied the law correctly. If they find procedural problems or legal mistakes, they have the authority to overturn or modify the decision. If they conclude that the trial was conducted properly, the life sentence will remain in place. This legal path is the normal route for any serious criminal conviction. And for many observers, the appeal process will ultimately determine the future of the case. Still, the entrance of international political voices can affect the broader environment around such a case. Not by directly controlling the courts, but by increasing the level of attention and scrutiny surrounding the issue. When leaders from other African countries begin to speak about a legal matter, it often encourages wider discussion among diplomatic communities, regional organizations, and political observers. That is exactly what is happening now. The statement from William Ruto has sparked debate across media platforms and policy circles. Supporters of Nnamdi Kanu see the development as an encouraging sign that his situation is gaining attention outside Nigeria. Some believe that international awareness could help push for a review of the case or encourage political dialogue. On the other side, many Nigerians believe the issue should remain strictly within the country's legal framework. For them, the courts must be allowed to complete the process without external pressure. They argue that national sovereignty requires that Nigeria handle its own legal matters without interference from other governments. This difference in opinion highlights how deeply complex the situation has become. Because the case of Nnamdi Kanu has never been viewed as only a legal dispute. From the beginning, it has carried strong political and emotional significance. The involvement of the Indigenous People of Biafra movement has made the issue even more sensitive. The Nigerian government has consistently argued that the activities of the group threaten national unity and public order. Supporters of the movement argue that their struggle is about political rights and self-determination. These opposing perspectives have created years of tension, protests, legal battles, and heated public debate. Now, with the comments coming from Kenya's president, the conversation is expanding beyond Nigeria's borders. Political analysts are beginning to watch carefully for any official response from the Nigerian government. So far, there has been no formal diplomatic reaction to Ruto's remarks. However, discussions within political and diplomatic circles are clearly growing. The situation now sits at an unusual intersection of law, politics, and international attention. The appeal process continues within Nigeria's judiciary. At the same time, the wider African political community is beginning to pay closer attention to how the case develops. For now, the legal system remains the central arena where the future of Nnamdi Kanu will be decided. But the growing regional conversation shows that the case is no longer being watched by Nigerians alone. Across Africa, leaders, analysts, and observers are quietly monitoring the situation to see what the next phase will bring. At this moment, three powerful forces are shaping the future of the case involving Nnamdi Kanu: the law, politics, and international attention. Each of these forces is now moving at the same time, and together they are keeping the case in the spotlight across Nigeria and beyond. First is the legal process. After the life sentence that was delivered on November 20th, the legal battle did not end. Instead, it moved into a new stage. Nnamdi Kanu's legal team quickly filed an appeal against the conviction. That appeal is now one of the most important developments in the entire case. The Court of Appeal will examine the judgment that led to the life sentence. The judges will review the legal arguments, the procedures followed during the trial, and the way the law was applied. If the appeal court identifies serious legal problems in the earlier ruling, the judgment could be changed or set aside. But if the judges conclude that the trial was conducted properly and the law was correctly applied, the life sentence will remain in place. This means the appeal process could play a decisive role in determining what happens next. For now, the case remains firmly inside Nigeria's judicial system. However, the legal battle is only one part of the wider picture. The second force shaping the future of this issue is politics. The activities of the Indigenous People of Biafra have long created strong political reactions across Nigeria. The group has consistently called for the creation of an independent Biafra state. The Nigerian government has rejected that demand and has treated the movement as a serious threat to national stability. Because of this, the case involving Nnamdi Kanu has always been surrounded by strong political emotions. Supporters believe he represents a struggle for political rights and self-determination. Critics argue that his activities encouraged actions that could weaken national unity. These opposing views have shaped public debate for years. Even after the life sentence was announced, the political arguments did not disappear. Instead, they became even more intense. Many people began discussing what the ruling means for the future of the region, for Nigeria's political stability, and for the broader conversation about national unity. Now a third force has entered the discussion: international attention. The recent statement by William Ruto has expanded the conversation beyond Nigeria. When a sitting African president publicly says he is ready to fight for someone's freedom, it immediately draws attention from political observers across the continent. Ruto stated that he would support efforts to make sure the right thing is done in the case of Nnamdi Kanu. He also stressed that Kanu's rights must not be violated. In addition, he mentioned that the African Union could take action when the time is appropriate. Those comments have created a new layer of debate. Some observers see them as a call for fairness and respect for legal rights. Others believe the remarks introduce unnecessary external pressure into a domestic legal matter. Nigeria's legal framework remains clear on this issue. Court decisions are handled through established legal channels, and appeals must follow the procedures set by the judicial system. Foreign governments cannot directly influence those legal processes, but international attention can still shape the political atmosphere surrounding a case. When leaders across Africa begin discussing a situation, the issue naturally receives more regional focus. Diplomats, Analysts and policy experts begin asking questions and studying how the situation might affect relations between countries. This does not mean the outcome of the case will suddenly change. But it does mean the case is being watched far more closely than before. Inside Nigeria, many citizens are waiting to see how the appeal process unfolds. Some expect the courts to review the case carefully and deliver a final legal decision. Others believe the situation could eventually involve political dialogue or diplomatic discussions. For now, no official response has been issued regarding the comments made by the Kenyan president. However, the conversation surrounding the case continues to grow across political platforms and media discussions. The future of Nnamdi Kanu now sits at the center of a complex moment where legal proceedings, political tensions, and international interest are all intersecting. The appeal remains active. The political debate continues. And the attention from outside Nigeria is slowly increasing. What happens next will depend largely on how these three forces evolve in the coming months. The courts will continue their work. Political reactions will continue to shape public debate. And the wider African community will keep watching closely as the next chapter of this important case unfolds.